She arrives home early and finds her daughter in the cold. What her husband did broke her heart. Before we start today's story, comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss what's next. There were things an 8-year-old shouldn't know, like how to sort 100 little pebbles into 3 perfect piles: white, gray, and black. That was the first thing Alara Vance saw when she came home a day earlier than planned. Her daughter, Leora, sat all alone on the cold, wet grass in their backyard. She was completely focused on her strange task, not even noticing her mom standing nearby, frozen in shock. Leora's tiny fingers were red from the cold, but she didn't stop working. Alara's husband, Leora's dad, was nowhere to be seen. And what Alara was about to find out would change everything she thought she knew about her family. The autumn sun hung low in the sky, casting a soft golden light over the quiet street. Alara slowly drove her car into the driveway. It was October, and the air was chilly, nipping at her hands as she rolled down her window. She had cut her business trip short by a day because she couldn't wait to hug her daughter. She imagined Leora's bright smile and laughter when she surprised her. The thought filled her with warmth after days of boring meetings and long hours away from home. But as Alara turned off the car, the house was too quiet. There were no quick footsteps or excited shouts of "Mommy" to greet her. There was only silence. A strange feeling crawled over her. She got out of the car, her heels clicking on the pavement, and looked around. The porch swing hung still, the chains unmoving. The house windows glowed faintly, but there were no shadows inside. Alara frowned. Leora always came running, even when she knew her mom was coming home. Something felt wrong. She grabbed her bag and walked toward the house, her steps quickening as the uneasy feeling grew stronger. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. When she rounded the corner to the backyard, Alara froze. There was Leora, kneeling on the damp ground, sorting pebbles into 3 perfect piles: white, gray, black. Her hands moved carefully, as if every pebble had to be placed just right. The sight was strange and unsettling, like some sort of ritual. Leora's thin jacket was wet from the evening dew, and her small fingers were scratched and red. They trembled as she worked. She didn't even notice her mother standing 10 feet away. "Leora, sweetheart," Alara called softly, her voice shaking. Leora flinched, her hands stopping mid-motion. Slowly, she lifted her head, and Alara's heart squeezed. Leora's bright, curious eyes were dull and distant, like a light had gone out. "What are you doing out here? It's cold." Leora blinked, then looked down again. She clutched a gray pebble tightly in her hand, but didn't speak. Alara hurried across the grass, kneeling beside her. The cold seeped through her pants, but she didn't care. She gently grabbed Leora's icy hands and gasped at the scratches on them. "Honey, why are you out here alone?" Alara whispered. "Dad said to finish it," Leora murmured, glancing quickly toward the house, then lowering her gaze again. Alara's stomach turned. She pulled off her scarf and wrapped it around her daughter's shoulders. "Finish what? Sorting rocks in the cold?" She helped Leora to her feet, wrapping an arm around her small frame, and guided her toward the house. Warmth filled the living room as they stepped inside. Soft music played, a slow jazz record spinning in the background. Caspian, her husband, sat calmly on the couch with a book in his hands and a steaming cup of tea nearby. He looked up and smiled calmly, as though nothing was wrong. "You're back early," he said smoothly, closing his book. "Good trip?" Alara's grip on Leora's shoulder tightened. "Caspian, why was Leora outside alone? Her hands are scratched and she's freezing." Caspian's calm expression didn't change. "It's a focus exercise, sorting stones by color. It teaches her order and patience. A structured mind is a strong mind." He sipped his tea as if that explained everything. "Discipline?" Alara's voice rose in disbelief. "She's 8 years old. She was out there in the cold alone, sorting rocks like she was being punished." Leora stood silently by the door, her wet jacket dripping on the floor. Caspian's expression hardened slightly. You're overreacting. It's not punishment, it's training. The world is chaotic, Alara. She needs tools to survive, to rise above it. You'd understand if you weren't gone so much. The words stung, filling Alara with guilt for the late nights and missed events. But she pushed the feeling down and looked at Leora's trembling hands. She could have gotten sick, she said firmly. This isn't right. She's fine, Caspian said calmly, glancing at Leora. Aren't you, Leora? Leora nodded faintly. I'm okay, she whispered, but she didn't look up. Her little hands clutched her jacket tightly. Alara's heart broke. She knelt in front of Leora, tucking her hair behind her ear. Go change into something warm, sweetheart. I'll be right there. Leora hesitated, then shuffled toward the stairs, her steps small and careful as if she didn't want to make a sound. When she was gone, Alara turned to Caspian. Her voice was low but sharp. What kind of exercise leaves a child shivering in the backyard? Explain it to me. Caspian sighed. You're too emotional. This is about structure, not feelings. Leora's learning focus and discipline. It's based on proven methods I've been reading about. Alara glanced at the books on the coffee table. Their titles were harsh. Mind of Steel, Crafting Excellence. A chill ran through her. This stops now, she said. She's not your experiment. She turned and climbed the stairs, her heart pounding. She had so many questions. What was happening when she was away? How long had Leora been doing these exercises? And why did Caspian's calmness feel so fake? Upstairs, Alara paused outside Leora's door. She heard soft rustling as her daughter changed clothes. The image of Leora kneeling on the cold grass, sorting pebbles with trembling fingers, wouldn't leave her mind. This wasn't discipline. This was something darker. A chill ran down her spine. The man she loved, the father of her child, was hiding something. And whatever it was already tearing their family apart. The next morning, the kitchen was filled with a heavy silence. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, lighting the room in stripes. Alara sat at the table, her coffee untouched. Leora ate her cereal quietly, her spoon scraping the bowl slowly. She didn't look up once. Caspian stood at the counter, slicing an apple with perfect, precise movements. Alara's mind replayed the night before. Leora's red hands, Caspian's calm voice, the books about strength and discipline. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Caspian, we need to talk about yesterday, she said, gripping her coffee cup tightly. Leaving Leora outside in the cold, making her sort rocks, it's too much for an 8-year-old. Caspian didn't look at her. It's not about rocks, Alara, he said sharply. It's about teaching her focus and resilience. You're being too emotional. She's a child, not a science project, Alara said firmly. She was freezing. She's scratched up. This isn't okay. Leora's spoon paused midair, her shoulders hunched slightly, but she said nothing. Caspian set the apple slices neatly on a plate and placed it in front of Leora. She didn't touch them. You're gone so much. You don't see the chaos she brings, Caspian said coldly. Tantrums, distractions. She needs order. I'm giving her tools to succeed. Alara swallowed hard, guilt twisting in her chest. She worked a lot, but this wasn't about her. This is about our daughter, she said firmly. She's scared, Caspian. This isn't parenting, it's control. Caspian's cool gaze didn't soften. You're coddling her. Weakness comes from too many emotions. These books prove it. He gestured at the stack of books on the counter. Their titles looked more like military guides than parenting advice. Alara stood up. Leora, finish your breakfast and grab your backpack. I'll drive you to school. Leora nodded, slipping quietly away with her backpack. The untouched apple slices sat on the table like a quiet protest. Outside, the autumn air smelled of fallen leaves. As Alara walked Leora to the car, a soft voice called her name. Alara, said Mrs. Valdez, their elderly neighbor. She stood near her rose bushes, pruning them gently. Good to see you home. Her kind smile had a hint of concern. How's Leora doing? She's quiet, Alara said carefully. I've noticed, Mrs. Valdez replied softly. I see her out there a lot lately, doing strange little tasks, for hours, even in the cold. She used to draw with chalk and laugh. Now she just follows orders, like she's carrying something heavy. Alara's heart sank. What do you mean? Mrs. Valdez sighed. Yesterday she was out there for nearly 2 hours sorting those rocks. I offered her a cookie, but she said she wasn't allowed until she finished. Her voice was worried. It doesn't feel right, Alara, not for a child her age. Alara's stomach churned. Mrs. Valdez's words only confirmed her fears. She thanked her quietly, then drove Leora to school. Leora sat in the passenger seat, half twisting the straps of her backpack nervously. Leora, Alara said softly as they parked. Do you like sorting pebbles? Does it make you happy? Leora kept her eyes on her lap. Dad says it's good for me. It helps me be better, she whispered. She opened the door and walked away without another word, leaving Alara gripping the steering wheel tightly. Back at home, Alara stood in the silent kitchen. Caspian had gone to his study. The door closed softly, but to Alara, it felt like a wall rising between her and her family. She stood in the kitchen, staring at a stack of books on the counter. Their titles felt sharp, almost angry. Mind of Steel, Crafting Excellence. She picked one up and flipped through it. The pages were filled with cold, hard words about how to erase feelings and turn people into perfect thinkers. Her stomach twisted. This didn't feel like parenting. It felt like something else, something scary and planned. Alara thought about Leora's empty eyes and the little scratches on her hands. She remembered Mrs. Valdez, their neighbor, and how worried she had been when she spoke about Leora. Slowly, Alara began to see a picture she didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore. Caspian's exercises for Leora weren't just random tasks. They were part of a plan, a set of invisible rules wrapping around their daughter like chains. Alara's guilt about being away so often burned in her heart, but a stronger feeling rose above it. The need to protect Leora. She would not let her daughter slip away. She closed the book with trembling hands, not out of fear, but determination. Tonight, when Leora was asleep, she would search for the truth. She would look through Caspian's study, his laptop, his books, anything that could explain what was happening. The house, once warm and safe, now felt like a maze filled with secrets. Alara was tired of being lost in it. She would tear down every wall, no matter what she found. The night was quiet, wrapping the house in a heavy silence. The only sound was the soft creak of the floor under Alara's bare feet. Hours had passed since their tense breakfast, but Caspian's cold words about structure and resilience still echoed in her head. She remembered Leora's whisper earlier that day. Dad says this is good for me. Mrs. Valdez's worried voice haunted her too. Alara couldn't sleep. Her mind was full of fear and determination. The book's titles flashed in her memory like warning signs. Mind of Steel. Crafting Excellence. Caspian's study was the key. She was sure of it. She paused outside Leora's bedroom door, which was slightly open. Moonlight poured across the bed where Leora lay curled up under her quilt, hugging her teddy bear tight. Her small chest rose and fell unevenly, as if her dreams were troubled. The sight hurt Alara's heart. Leora was not the same little girl who used to draw colorful galaxies on paper and beg for one more bedtime story. Something or someone had dimmed her light. Alara leaned against the doorway, steadying herself, then tiptoed toward the stairs. The answers she needed weren't in Leora's room. They were in Caspian's. She reached his study. The door was shut, as always. She twisted the knob slowly, flinching at the soft click it made in the silent house. The study smelled of old books and ink. Caspian's desk was perfectly neat, with his laptop closed and papers stacked evenly. The shelves were full of more cold, serious books, their spines glaring down at her. Then she remembered something. Leora's craft box. Her daughter had loved that box, once filled with crayons and stickers. But lately it had been abandoned. Maybe it held a clue about what Leora had lost. Alara slipped quietly back into Leora's room. She knelt by the bed and reached under it. Her fingers brushed against something. She pulled out the craft box. Its bright stickers were faded, and the lid was barely open. Her heart thudded. The box felt heavier than she remembered. Inside were crayons, glitter, and paper clips, all untouched for weeks. It was like a time capsule from before Leora had changed. But then Alara saw something strange. A small notebook with Caspian's neat handwriting on the cover. Progress Journal. Alara's breath caught. She opened it with shaking hands. The first page was filled with rules, each one written in bold letters. Rule number 1, no crying. Emotions cloud judgment. Rule number 7, tasks must be done perfectly. Rule number 12, keep your space spotless. The words were cold, like instructions for building a robot, not raising a child. What came next was even worse. Under each rule, Leora had written her own notes in shaky, childish handwriting. Some days had golden stars next to them, task complete, room clean. Other days had dark clouds scribbled hard enough to tear the paper. Next to one cloud, Leora had written, needs fixing. I wasn't good enough. Tears filled Alara's eyes. She clutched the notebook, her nails digging into its cover. This wasn't a journal of progress. It was a diary of pain. It showed how Caspian was breaking their daughter's spirit, teaching her to judge herself harshly. One page near the back stood out. Leora had drawn a picture, a small flower pushing through a pile of pebbles. Underneath, she had written in tiny letters, Mom, I miss you. The drawing shattered Alara's heart. Her brave, creative little girl had hidden this message, a tiny cry for help. Guilt washed over Alara. She had been away too much, lost in her work, trusting Caspian to take care of Leora. But this wasn't care. It was control. She closed the notebook, her sadness turning into steel. This had to stop. She thought about Mrs. Valdez's words, Leora's endless pebble sorting exercises, and the way her daughter's smile had vanished. It all fit together like pieces of a dark puzzle. Caspian wasn't just strict. He was changing Leora, trying to mold her into something cold and perfect. But why? Wait a second. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe and share your favorite part in the comments below. And don't forget to drop a heart to show your support. Alara gently slid the box back under Leora's bed, not wanting to wake her. She stood and thought quickly. Caspian's laptop was next. If his books taught this cruel philosophy, his computer might reveal even more. She needed proof to confront him, something undeniable to protect Leora. Sneaking through his things felt wrong, but this was worse. This was about saving her daughter. She crept down the hallway. The house felt like it was watching her, its warm memories now turned into shadows. The study door closed behind her with a soft click. The room felt like a vault filled with secrets. The smell of books and ink was heavy. Alara sat at Caspian's desk. The laptop glowed under the dim lamp. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. Snooping felt like a betrayal, but Caspian had already betrayed them all. She typed in a password guess, Leora Aurorate. Wrong. Another guess, Order First. Wrong. Then she remembered his favorite book title. She typed Legacy Builder 78. The laptop unlocked. The screen lit up, and Alara took a deep breath. She opened his browser. It was full of strange websites, psychology forums, strict parenting articles, and one name that stood out, the Legacy Project. The website's tagline made her shiver, crafting the future through discipline. Caspian had already logged in, so she clicked. Inside was a secret forum filled with parents and teachers who believed children should be stripped of emotions to make them perfect. Posts described cruel methods of training kids. Her heart dropped when she saw Caspian's username, MindSculptor78. She clicked his profile. Her breath caught. His posts were detailed, cold, and proud. He described progress with his subject, Leora. One post even had a picture of her sitting outside, sorting pebbles, her face blank. The caption read, Eliminating emotional resistance in an 8-year-old subject. Consistency is key. People in the comments praised him. Impressive work, Mind Sculptor. This is the future. Tears burned in Alara's eyes. Caspian wasn't just strict. He was turning Leora into an experiment for strangers' approval. She kept scrolling. A private chat popped up. Caspian was talking to someone named Architect Prime. The subject shows progress but resists emotional detachment, wrote Architect Prime. The mother is a variable, too sentimental, considering an advanced program. Caspian's reply made Alara's blood run cold. Agreed. The mother's influence is a barrier. The program could isolate the subject for optimal shaping. Isolation. Advanced program. They wanted to send Leora away. Alara's heart raced. Caspian wasn't just controlling their daughter. He was planning to take her away and finish breaking her spirit. She searched deeper, finding files, schedules, and testimonies from parents who had succeeded in turning their kids into emotionless models. One document described a week-long camp for final training. Her hands shook as she took screenshots of everything. She sent them to her email, then quickly cleared the browser history. The house was silent until a floorboard creaked upstairs. She froze, listening. No movement followed. Caspian was still asleep. Alara closed the laptop. The room seemed darker now, the books like silent enemies. She thought of Leora's flower drawing, her little cry for help. Caspian's rules weren't just strict parenting. They were a cage. And Alara was done letting her daughter live in it. She slipped out of the study, her heart pounding. Tonight, she couldn't confront Caspian yet. She needed a plan. But she would check on Leora, hold her tight, and silently promise her that she would fight. She would fight for Leora's light, no matter what it took. The door closed softly behind Alara, making a quiet sound that felt like a promise. She stood in the dark hallway, her heart heavy. The kitchen was bright and cold, very different from Caspian's dark study, where she had found the scary truth about something called the Legacy Project. Morning light came through the windows, but it couldn't make her feel better. Fear twisted in her chest like a snake. She sat at the table, staring at her cup of coffee that she hadn't touched. Under a napkin, she hid printed pages from Caspian's computer. Her eyes burned as she remembered the words she had read. The mother's influence is a barrier. The subject needs isolation. Every word felt like a stab. Leora's notebook, full of strange rules and smudges, wouldn't leave her mind. The online forum's cold words and the talk about a scary training program turned Alara's fear into determination. Today she would face Caspian. No more secrets. No more excuses. The house was quiet, but then Alara heard Caspian's footsteps coming down the stairs. They were slow and steady, as if he controlled everything. He walked into the kitchen, stopping when he saw Alara sitting stiffly at the table. "No breakfast today?" he asked lightly, but there was curiosity in his voice. His sharp eyes looked around the table. Alara's fingers tightened around the napkin. "We need to talk," she said firmly, even though her heart was racing. She pushed the napkin aside, showing him the printed pages. Screenshots of his online posts, a photo of Leora sorting pebbles, and a scary chat about isolating her. "What is this, Caspian?" she demanded. Caspian's face froze for a second. Surprise, or maybe fear, flashed in his eyes, but then he looked calm again. He picked up a page and read it slowly. "You went through my laptop," he said quietly. It wasn't a question, it sounded like an accusation. "You're turning our daughter into an experiment." Alara's voice grew loud. "The Legacy Project's rules about not crying, making her sort pebbles. You're treating Leora like a project, not like a little girl." She stood up suddenly, and her chair scraped across the floor. "Explain this, Caspian. Now!" Caspian carefully placed the paper back on the table, his movements slow and controlled. "You don't understand, Alara," he said calmly. "You're too emotional to see the bigger picture. The world is hard and dangerous. Leora needs discipline if she's going to be strong. The Legacy Project is about making her exceptional, not weak." He stopped speaking, but the unspoken word hung in the air. "Like you." The insult cut deep, but Alara didn't show it. "Strong?" she said bitterly. "You're breaking her. Those rules and pebbles, she's terrified of failing you. She's only 8, Caspian. She should be laughing and drawing pictures, not sorting rocks to make you happy." Caspian's jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. "You're spoiling her," he said coldly. You coddle her with your emotions. The Legacy Project has proof. Data, it works. I'm giving her what you can't, a strong, focused mind. His voice grew louder, his calm slipping away. You're never here, Alara. You don't see her disobedience, her wildness. I'm fixing it. Fixing her? Alara's voice broke, full of anger and pain. She's not a machine. She's our daughter. Her words echoed through the quiet morning like a slap. A soft gasp made Alara turn. Her heart sank. Leora stood in the doorway, her small body stiff, her eyes wide and scared. She had heard everything. Leora, Caspian said gently, though his voice was still firm. Go back to your room. But Leora didn't move. Her little hands twisted the hem of her pajama shirt, her big eyes darting between her parents. Suddenly she ran to Caspian, hugging his leg tightly. Mom, don't yell at Dad, she sobbed. It's my fault. I'm not good enough. I'll try harder, I promise. Her words cut Alara's heart into pieces. Tears streamed down Leora's face, but she clung to Caspian as if he was her safe place. Alara knelt, reaching for Leora, but the girl flinched and held on tighter to her father. The sight made Alara feel like she'd been punched. This wasn't love. This was fear. Caspian's rules had sunk so deep into Leora's mind that she thought she was the problem. Leora, sweetheart, Alara whispered through tears. It's not your fault. You're perfect just the way you are. Caspian put a hand on Leora's shoulder, his face calm and unreadable. She's learning discipline, Alara, he said firmly. You're just confusing her. Alara stood tall, her voice steady. No, Caspian, you're confusing her. You're stealing her childhood for some twisted dream of perfection. She looked at Leora's trembling body and made a silent promise. She would protect her daughter. She would get her away from Caspian's control no matter what it took. Leora's crying slowed, but she still clung to Caspian. Alara's heart broke. She grabbed the printed pages and turned to leave. This isn't over, she said quietly, her voice like steel. She looked back at Leora. I love you, sweetheart. Always. Leora's eyes flickered with something, fear or maybe hope, before she looked away. Alara climbed the stairs, her heart pounding. The house felt like a prison. Caspian's calm voice floated after her. You're making this harder than it has to be. She didn't answer. She went to pack a bag for Leora. She needed a safe place to think. The truth was out, and the wall between her and Caspian had crumbled. But the fight for Leora was just beginning. Alara's friend's apartment was small but safe. Its soft-colored walls and comfy furniture felt completely different from the cold tension she had left behind. 3 days had passed since that fight in the kitchen. Leora's tearful words, "It's my fault," still echoed in Alara's heart. She had packed their bags and taken Leora away that night, clutching the screenshots from Caspian's laptop like they were her only hope. Now Alara sat on the couch, watching her daughter. Leora was curled up on the bed, hugging her teddy bear, wearing a sweater that was too big for her. The silence between them was heavy, like a wall Alara couldn't climb. Leora barely spoke anymore. Her bright, expressive eyes were now guarded. She stared at the floor whenever Alara tried to meet her gaze. I want to go home to Dad, Leora whispered that morning. Her voice was so soft that Alara could barely hear it over the hum of the heater. The words stabbed Alara's heart. Caspian had convinced Leora that she was safe with him, that his harsh rules were love. Alara held her phone tightly. She needed a plan. More proof. Something to stop Caspian before he could send Leora to that camp he had talked about. She paced to the window, looking at the busy street below. Cars passed by, leaves blew in the autumn wind, but she felt like she was carrying a heavy stone in her chest. She thought of all her mistakes, the times she had been too focused on her work, too trusting of Caspian, too blind to Leora's sadness. She pressed her forehead to the glass and sighed. Then a small ding broke the silence. A new email. The subject line was chilling. Legacy Project, I can help. Alara's heart raced as she opened it. The email was from a man named Soren. He wrote, I was part of the Legacy Project until it almost destroyed my son. He was hospitalized because their methods broke him. I saw your husband's posts about your daughter, Leora. I can't let this happen again. I have proof, documents, recordings, messages. Meet me, and I'll give you everything. Alara's hands shook as she read about Soren's son. The boy had been pushed to silence, endless tasks, and so much stress that he collapsed. There were attached files, screenshots, manuals, even a recording of a Legacy Project leader talking about reprogramming kids to remove their emotions. One document described the camp Caspian wanted Leora to go to, a week-long program designed to completely break children and rebuild them. Alara's stomach turned. She looked at Leora, who was hugging her teddy bear, her little body curled up as if to protect herself. The thought of her baby girl in that camp filled Alara with rage. Soren's email was a lifeline. She quickly typed a reply, agreeing to meet him at a cafe the next day. She saved all the files in a safe place. With these, plus the screenshots in Leora's notebook, she could finally stop Caspian. "Mom, are we going back soon?" Leora's soft voice pulled her from her thoughts. There was hope in her eyes, but Alara knew it was hope for Caspian. "Not yet, sweetheart," Alara whispered, brushing Leora's hair back. "We're staying here for a while. We're safe here." Leora's lips trembled, but she didn't argue. She snuggled into her pillow instead. Alara's heart hardened with resolve. She couldn't make Leora see the truth yet, but she would fight for her anyway, even if it meant fighting her daughter's love for her father. The apartment felt smaller now. The pastel walls seemed to close in. Alara stepped onto the balcony to breathe. The city stretched out below her, uncaring of her pain. She thought of Caspian's calm, cruel words. He believed he was right, but she knew now his strength wasn't real. It was control, not love. Soren's message gave her hope, but it also made her realize the Legacy Project wasn't just Caspian. It was bigger, more dangerous. Alara gripped the cold railing and made a vow. She would stop Caspian. She would save Leora. That night, she stayed by Leora's bed. She watched her daughter sleep, her little chest rising and falling, her teddy bear clutched tight. "I'll bring you back, Leora," she whispered into the dark. "I promise." The next day, the cafe felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. The soft chatter of people and the sound of cups clinking was so different from the storm inside Alara's heart. A week had passed since she fled. Soren's email was still burned into her mind. She now had a thick folder of proof: Caspian's posts, Leora's notebook, Soren's documents. It was all on the table in front of her. She had asked Caspian to meet her here today. This was it, the moment she would confront him and save their daughter. The doorbell chimed as Caspian entered. He stood tall, his eyes sharp as they scanned the cafe until they landed on her. He walked over, his steps calm, his face unreadable. "You wanted to talk," he said, sitting across from her. His voice was quiet, almost too calm. Alara pushed the folder toward him. The papers thudded softly on the table. "This is everything," she said firmly. "Your online posts, your plan to send Leora to that camp, and proof from another father whose son was broken by the same methods you're using on our daughter." Caspian looked at the folder, his calm cracking for just a moment, but he didn't touch it. "You're overreacting," Caspian said, leaning back. "Everything I've done is for Leora's future. You're too emotional to see it. The Legacy Project isn't dangerous. It's a plan for greatness. If you weren't always gone, you'd understand." His words stung, but Alara stayed strong. "Don't you dare blame me," she snapped, her voice loud enough that people nearby turned to look. "You wrote that I'm a barrier. You wrote about isolating her. You're not raising Leora, you're trying to reprogram her." Alara sat in a small cafe, holding a folder in her hands. She opened it and showed Caspian a picture of his chat with someone called Architect Prime. The message on the screen said, "The mother's influence is a barrier. The child needs isolation." Caspian's jaw tightened. His fingers tapped on the table, once, twice, before he stopped. "You're reading it wrong," he said, but his voice shook a little. Leora needs structure, he continued, his voice cold. She doesn't need your soft parenting. That camp would make her stronger. You're holding her back. Alara leaned forward, her eyes blazing with anger. Stronger like Soren's son? She shot back. He ended up in the hospital, Caspian. He broke down because of those camps you admire so much. She pulled a paper from the folder. It was a doctor's report about Soren's son, who had terrible anxiety after going to the legacy camp. Is this what you want for Leora? To break her spirit? To take away everything that makes her who she is? Caspian's face turned pale. He glanced at the report and quickly looked away, his hands curling into fists. That's just one case, he said softly, but he didn't sound sure anymore. The Legacy Project has helped many kids. You're picking only the bad examples. Bad examples? Alara's voice was sharp, like a knife cutting through his excuses. Leora is only 8 years old, Caspian. She's terrified of failing you, she wrote in her notebook. Needs fixing when she breaks your rules. She's just a little girl. She should be playing, laughing, and having fun, not punishing herself for being human. Alara's voice softened, but she stayed firm. You have a choice. Leave this legacy project today. Delete your account. Burn those books. Come with me to family therapy and help Leora heal. Or, she held up the folder. Or, I take this to court. I'll get full custody of Leora. I'll expose this group so no other child gets hurt like Soren's son. Or Leora. The cafe grew silent. The hum of voices and clinking dishes faded as Caspian stared at the folder. His fingers twitched like he wanted to argue, but he had no words. Then, something inside him broke. He dropped his head into his hands and let out a shaky breath. I thought I was helping her, he whispered, his voice cracking. I feel so useless, Alara. You're always successful out in the world, and I'm just here at home, translating books nobody reads. The Legacy Project gave me purpose. I thought I could make Leora extraordinary. I thought I was enough. Alara felt a deep sadness for the man she used to love. His words showed his pain, but they didn't erase the harm he had caused. You didn't make her extraordinary, she said softly. You made her scared. You made her think she's not enough. She leaned closer, her voice steady. Do you want Leora to end up like Soren's son? Broken because you thought rules and punishment were love? Caspian's hands dropped, revealing his tear-stained face. His red eyes filled with regret. No, he whispered. I didn't see it. I thought I was building her future. I thought I was doing what you couldn't. Alara didn't reply. She let the heavy silence stay. Her heart ached for the family they had once been, but her focus now was on protecting Leora. Make your choice, Caspian, she said firmly. For her. Caspian nodded weakly, his hand trembling as he reached for the folder. His fingers rested on its edge. I'll stop, he whispered. I'll try to fix this. But his eyes told Alara that he wasn't sure he could. She stood, gathering the folder with steady hands. Therapy starts tomorrow, she said. Be there or I'll go to court. The bell over the cafe door chimed as she walked out, leaving Caspian alone with his regret. The fight was not over. Leora's healing would take time, and trust would take even longer. But Alara had drawn a clear line. She would protect her daughter no matter what. 6 months later, their lives looked very different. Alara and Leora lived in a small apartment now, a second-floor walk-up filled with warmth. The walls were decorated with Leora's colorful drawings, bright and full of life, so different from the cold, strict house they'd left behind. Outside in their shared garden, Alara knelt next to Leora. The little girl's hands were covered in paint as they worked together on a giant canvas spread across the grass. The air smelled of blooming lilacs, a sweet sign of spring and new beginnings. Leora dipped her brush into bright red paint and made bold, messy strokes. She laughed and flicked paint at her mom. Alara laughed too, something she hadn't done in months, and swiped a streak of blue paint onto Leora's sleeve. Leora's laughter rang out, pure and free. Therapy was helping. Each session was peeling back the fear and sadness that Caspian's rules had caused. Leora was slowly becoming herself again. They had moved here for a fresh start. Alara worked less now, choosing to stay close to Leora. She had found a therapist who understood childhood trauma, and little by little, Leora was finding her voice again. She filled sketchbooks with stars and flowers. She even joined an art club at school, the first step back into being a happy kid. But some nights, Leora still woke up crying, clutching her teddy bear, whispering, "I'm sorry, Dad." Each time Alara hugged her tight and promised, "You're enough. You are perfect just as you are. Love doesn't come with rules." Caspian had moved out. He lived alone in a small rented place and was going to therapy too, by court order. Alara had full custody, thanks to the evidence she'd gathered: Soren's documents, the screenshots, Leora's notes. Caspian only saw Leora under supervision. Today was one of those visits. Alara looked up and saw Caspian standing at the edge of the garden, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than she remembered. His sharp, proud posture was gone. He seemed softer, humbled. Leora froze, her paintbrush hovering midair. She looked at her dad with a mix of fear and curiosity. Then slowly, she lifted her hand and waved. Caspian's face softened. He gave a small, tentative wave back. Alara's chest ached. She still didn't trust him. The pain he'd caused was too deep. But Leora's small wave felt like a bridge, a fragile one, but a bridge nonetheless. Alara turned to her daughter. "What's this painting called?" she asked, smiling. Leora studied the messy swirls of color. "Freedom," she said clearly. Alara's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. The word felt like a victory. Later, as they cleaned up, Alara found Leora's old craft box. Inside, she discovered a folded piece of paper hidden under some markers. Her breath caught as she unfolded it. It was a drawing of a flower growing through a pile of pebbles, the same one Leora had drawn months ago, back when she was sad and afraid. But now the flower was bright and colorful. On the back, in careful handwriting, Leora had written, "Mom, I'll be strong." Tears filled Alara's eyes as she looked at her daughter, who was happily rinsing brushes at the garden tap. "Leora, did you draw this recently?" Alara asked softly. Leora blushed. "No, I made it a long time ago. I hid it so Dad wouldn't find it. I wanted you to know I was trying to be strong." Alara knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly. "You're already strong, sweetheart," she whispered. "Stronger than I ever knew." Leora hugged her back, holding her tightly. For the first time in months, Alara felt her daughter's embrace without fear in it. Caspian stood quietly at the garden's edge, watching. His expression was unreadable, but softer than Alara had seen in years. He didn't come closer. He respected their space. Therapy was forcing him to face what he had done. Alara didn't know if he would truly change, but for Leora's sake, she hoped he would try. As the sun set, the garden glowed with golden light. Alara and Leora packed up their paints. The colorful canvas stood drying on the grass, a bright symbol of their healing and their future. Alara looked at Leora, laughing as she splashed water, and felt a warmth she hadn't felt in so long. The pain of their past was still there, but so was hope. They weren't a perfect family, but they were real. A family built on love, not fear. Caspian turned and walked down the path. Leora's little wave had planted a seed, one that might grow into forgiveness one day. For now, Alara focused on her daughter here in this peaceful garden where laughter had replaced strict rules. They would heal day by day, painting over the shadows of their past with colors of their own. Thank you for joining Alara and Leora's journey through this powerful story of hurt and healing. Their story reminds us that love can rebuild even the most broken hearts. What part of their journey touched your heart the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're listening from and what this story means to you. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the heart. We'll see you again soon with another moving tale. Until then, keep listening, keep feeling, and remember, love always wins.